Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
Ready to get started?
Super ready.
Same.
Super Freddy.
Ready, Freddy.
Ready, Freddy. I'm just trying something new here.
Just trying out new things. That's acceptable.
Trying to be cool.
I'm not judging you. I'm Sydney.
And I'm Jess.
This is Malpractice Podcast.
This is Malpractice.
Welcome.
Look at us.
If it's your first time here,
Hi.
Why are you starting on a part 2?
Oh, yeah. That's right. I said hi, and then I was like, actually, what's wrong with you?
Oh, we got to see each other this weekend, so that's a new development in our life.
It was so nice.
I know.
I feel like I haven't seen you in forever, my little kitten face.
It's been a really long time since we've seen each other in person.
I was like very excited
Same.
to see you, and then I forced everyone in the group to hang out with me again the next day.
It was really fun, yeah. We went to a farmer's market the next day. It was cool. I like a farmer's market a lot.
I do too. I do like that one. I will say the farmer's market on Sunday in Austin is amazing.
I believe that. I mean, I went to it, but
On Saturday, I do like it more.
yeah, really.
Not as many people.
Mm.
I thought I was going to a hockey game tonight, but I'm going to one tomorrow, everyone.
Enjoy your hockey game. I'm surprised that Texas has hockey teams. I didn't even think that was a thing here.
Well, I was apparently a big fan of hockey when I was like 2 years old. My dad would take me.
That's adorable.
But it tracks in the trajectory of my aggressive life that I liked hockey at like a
Fair.
very small child. I was like at the glass like,
It's not
ooh,
unfair.
this look fun.
Oh, I love this. Smush him up against the glass.
So I'm going tomorrow.
I'm fine with hockey. I just don't especially care about it.
I don't really want to watch sports at all.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I've never really... I mean, I'll watch sports. Like, I'll watch something like basketball if it's exciting, but I don't want to watch, like, a baseball game.
Ugh. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but that is the most boring sport to watch.
We've covered this before. Eric loves baseball, and I'm like, God, I hope our kids don't play baseball.
Ugh.
Because if they play baseball, then we're going to have to go watch baseball games.
Ew. No.
Ugh,
Put
ugh.
them in soccer.
I know it's America's pastime, but God, at what cost?
America's pastime is not a selling card for me.
It is for some people.
Very suspicious of that.
Fair, same. America has a lot of other shady pastimes
And
that I don't trust.
Mhm, period. You want to get into it? I know you're an eager beaver.
Eager McBeaver. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's get into it. And I don't think I'm the only one.
No, you're not. I'm also excited. I have been talking about this. I'm very interested to see what happens.
Dope. Okay.
Actually, Michelle heard about this too because in her advertising courses, they referenced the response
Johnson
of
& Johnson?
J&J.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. That's the first thing we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So thank you guys for sticking with us. We actually got a few messages about this, so I know people are like ready to hear this one. So if you've been to the pharmacy ever to pick up some kind of medication, you take it home, you pull off the child-proof top. Well, first you take it out of the box, right? There's a sealed box outside of it. You pull off the child-proof top. You peel off the plastic safety seal inside the bottle. You take out the packaging cotton, and then you take your medication, right? Before any of that existed, the Tylenol murders took place. So we're back this week for part 2. Just a super quick recap. We're in 1982. The city of Chicago was thrown into an absolute panic when 7 people were murdered at random in approximately 1 day after taking extra-strength Tylenol that had been tainted with cyanide.
3 people are dead, and another is in critical condition tonight.
One of the victims took the pills he bought to his home.
His brother and sister-in-law were so upset by his death that they went back to the house and took some Tylenol from the same bottle.
During 3 days, 7 people died in the Chicago area from taking cyanide-laced Tylenol.
So if you haven't heard part 1, please go listen to that before continuing.
Yeah, it'll be better.
It's better, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to cover in part 1 the deaths, the order that they happen in, the victims, and a little bit about each of them, like personally. and the beginning of the investigation that is going to take some wild turns in this episode. So go back and listen to that. You can find that episode wherever you're currently listening to this one. You'll find it. Okay. So when we stopped at the end of episode 1, the investigative team was starting to look into these murders. And soon after they started doing that, they realized something is definitely wrong with the Tylenol. So as soon as they realized that, an attorney from Johnson & Johnson shows up at the hospital where this investigative team is kind of basing themselves at around 10:30 the day after most of the murders occurred. So this is like the next day. An attorney from Tylenol is there.
Oh, that's good. That's fast.
They're like, what's up? We heard something's wrong with our product, right?
Something shady's going down.
Exactly. By 3 p.m. that day, Johnson & Johnson announced the recall of Tylenol from lot MC2880, which is the lot where all of these cyanide tablet pills inside Tylenol bottles have been found in this same lot number, right? So they do a full recall of this batch. They tell everyone, look at your lot numbers. If you own a store, you work at a store, if you see these on the shelf, take them off, because they're thinking potentially at this point that it's like a disgruntled Tylenol employee, maybe.
Oh.
Like that's what they were worried about. So they're like, maybe something happened in the distribution process.
Because they're all connected so far.
Exactly, by this batch.
Yeah.
So they're like, we'll take all of this batch and we'll get rid of it and hopefully that will solve it. So this case becomes super interesting to me now because this gigantic pharmaceutical company, Johnson & Johnson, J&J, as I'm going to call them, they stepped in and actually handled things. And it's taught in universities. You mentioned that Michelle had heard it.
Yeah.
It's actually taught in universities as a shining example of how to handle what was essentially like a PR nightmare when their drugs seemed like they were poisoning people.
Yeah.
So first we're going to talk about the J&J response. They decide to pull everything from that batch of medication. Then the medical examiner we talked about last time, whose name is Donahue, he holds this press conference, and I'll throw in some audio from this press conference because we have footage of it, which is cool. He holds this press conference, and he's like, he scares the ever-loving shit out of everyone. He's like, if you're in Chicago, don't take Tylenol, you'll die.
Oh, good.
We don't know the extent of the contamination, so I think at this time it would be wise not to take extra-strength Tylenol at all.
Which is fair. So, understandably,
everyone's scared. Yeah.
Yes.
Wanted to remind people at the time, because I just thought of this too. I'm like, why is everyone freaking out? Because you shared last week that people at this time were taking Tylenol for like everything.
Yes.
Any like health concern, really, you would take a Tylenol. So there's another level of this where people are like, okay, well, now what do I do?
Exactly. The other thing that I'm not sure if we really like hammered home in part 1 is exactly how terrifying it would be. Because essentially, no one knew at this time whether it was just Tylenol being tampered with.
Right. Could have been everything.
And it's so different from how we do things now, because you basically just had to like trust that consumable products like milk, everything that you buy at the grocery store, none of it had protective sealing. So you just had to trust that no one had messed with it.
That was a wild time to be alive.
But before then, it like wasn't even a possibility to people that someone would do something like this. Like they didn't even think of it as a potential thing.
Well, as an untrusting bitch, I would have been very sus of everything.
No, I mean, same. But also it's like, I feel like I wanted to hammer.
I guess it's like until it happened,
yes,
you wouldn't think of it. Right.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to hammer it home because I was like, it is really scary to think about the fact that you just have to trust the process.
Yeah. No.
Of like, this food is not poison. This milk is not poison. Everything, every medication you're taking, every piece of food you eat, every liquid you drink, you essentially at this time just had to trust that it wasn't poisoned.
Which is like, we all think that, right?
Right.
I'm not opening Girl Scout cookies and like, hope this is not the one. Like, I'm not doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just trust that it's, before this happened, it wasn't even in people's minds that it was a possibility. So it was really shocking at the time.
Well, until you even brought it up, I didn't even think that the seals were there to prevent something like this.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, there are seals because it's, I don't know, because that is the way things are.
Because that's how you do things.
Yeah, and now
right.
I realize it's because there were murders, which is tragic.
It's so tragic.
It's just disgusting.
It's disgusting that you would have this idea.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the public freak out was there was no motive and it was so random. People were like, why would you do this?
Yeah, why would you do this? Like, authentically, why? Tell me why.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Why would you ever?
There's a string. We'll get into like, after this well, let's just talk about it now. We'll just talk about it now. After this happens, there's a string of like copycats, like hundreds of copycats.
What is wrong with people?
Right.
Like, actually and authentically, I'm curious.
What I think happened afterward is people went, oh shit, I can kill a bunch of people at random and maybe get a target that I'm intending to go for.
That's disgusting.
So there was one where they poisoned, I think it was an extra strength Excedrin bottle. This woman wanted to kill her husband. So she was like, hey, can you pick me up some Excedrin from the pharmacy? And knowing that she had poisoned Excedrin at that pharmacy.
Did she kill her husband?
Yes, and several other people. And she got caught.
Goddamn, bitch.
Right.
You have no aim.
There was one... do you remember when you were, like, it wasn't so much the case when we were kids, but like the generation right before us. Do you remember hearing on the news, like, oh, people are going to poison Halloween candy?
Yes.
So that was based, and we should do a whole separate case on this. That was based on a case where a man essentially wanted to kill his kid.
Why?
So he poisoned a bunch of different neighborhood, like, candies that were being handed out.
How did he get his hands on those candies?
They were the pixie sticks. Remember the pixie sticks?
Yeah,
so he
that's
put, like,
good shit.
I think it was rat poison inside a pixie stick that his son ate.
Why did he want to poison his kid?
Why does anybody want to do any of this shit?
Like, there are systems to help you relieve yourself of your responsibilities with children.
I know, absolutely. The point of all of this is that copycat killers
thinking this is
were
amazing.
the ones that came after this, which also... How much do you suck at life that you can't even come up with a poisoning plot on your own?
Well, how much?
You got to copy someone else's work.
And yeah, A, great question. B, you suck a lot.
You suck a lot.
And C, like, the other thing I'm thinking immediately, which is where my mind goes, which I don't know what that says about me, but I'm like, why would you do this right after this when everyone's heightened and aware? Wouldn't you give it a little pause?
I think that's because you're smart. You think that way.
Give a little break. I would never be like, well, now that everyone's really nervous, I'm going to poison cans of soup. Like, that's not what I would do.
The people who are like putting rat poison in a pixie stick, go figure, are not the maybe sharpest tools in the shed.
Honestly, if you're doing that, literally go fuck yourself.
Get fuck yourself. Okay. So everyone's freaking out. The poison control center phone lines, hospital waiting rooms are like jammed with people who are like, I took a Tylenol.
Nervous, yeah.
People are freaking out.
Oh my God, how freaking scary.
Poison specialist Lane Olaf.
We've been receiving calls about once every 15 seconds. At the Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's, we only have 3 poison lines, and they're lit up constantly, ever since yesterday morning.
Right now, they're telling people which lots of Tylenol are known to have contaminated capsules and checking to see if callers have displayed any symptoms of cyanide poisoning.
So any symptom, people were like, is this cyanide poisoning?
Right.
The internet is not a thing at this point, too. So you can't just Google, how does cyanide poisoning feel?
Wow.
They had fewer resources. So many people are coming in and calling the medical examiner. He basically just tells his staff to tell everyone, if you're calling me, if you're in the ER, you did not take what these other people took.
Oh.
If you're standing here right now and you're alive, you're fine.
Who is this guy? What's his name?
The medical examiner.
I really like him.
He's smart, yeah.
He said, if you are here now, you are fine. Get out.
If you're standing here, you're fine.
You have another issue. It isn't this. Get out of
Because these people collapsed in like minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And started convulsing.
Yeah.
If you're walking into the ER,
if you drove yourself here, it isn't you.
Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Officials here say if anyone has taken a cyanide-laced Tylenol capsule, they probably wouldn't be able to make it to the phone to call.
So the next thing that happens is the mayor of Chicago, the attorney general in Illinois, the FBI, everyone gets involved.
Oh my gosh, Criminal Minds, love it.
I know. We're going to talk about Criminal Minds a lot because it's me and Jess's favorite show, number 1.
Oh my God, did you see what I sent you about another season coming out?
I did see that. I love it. I want it. I need it. Original cast, too. That's what matters.
I'm so excited.
What's up? Okay. What's crazy, though, is that the Washington Post basically said Johnson & Johnson, quote, has effectively demonstrated how a major business ought to handle a disaster.
Yes, I agree.
So weird that a giant pharmaceutical company in the 1980s acts quick, prioritizes human lives. What's up?
We love that.
I know. At this point, Chicago police are driving through the streets on loudspeakers and telling everyone to throw their Tylenol away. I'm not joking.
Like in police cars, like on a megaphone?
Yes. There's like footage of this. I'll throw in some audio. Like they're driving through the streets on a police megaphone going, do not take Tylenol. Throw away any existing Tylenol in your home.
We had police riding around with their bullhorns, yelling, throw out your Tylenol, flush it down the toilet.
Do not take any Tylenol until further notice.
Right? That's like scary.
It's so scary, and it's like not funny. But for some reason, everything that happens at this time period is a cartoon in my head.
Okay, fair.
So I'm just seeing a cartoon. Like police car.
I mean, it's like, when you think about it, they would just send us a text now, right?
100%.
They'd be like, every major network carrier send out a text that says, don't take Tylenol. That cannot happen in this time. So they're like going through the streets. They're handing out pamphlets. Anyway.
That's so true. Yep.
Next, the mayor requests the removal of every bottle of Tylenol off of every shelf in the Chicago area, which they had not coordinated with J&J at this point.
Yeah.
So J&J is like, get rid of this one lot number. And the mayor is like, no, get every bottle of Tylenol.
Well, I also request that.
So that's what they did. And at this point, she does like a televised conference, and the fear basically goes global. Like all over the world, people are throwing all of their Tylenol away.
Well, yeah, I would too.
Same. Like better safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
In one survey that was done a month after the incident, 90% of people polled across the U.S. said that they had heard of the Chicago Tylenol murders. So it was like
that's
forefront of everyone's mind.
Good job to them at this time, getting information out.
It's actually crazy. And I can't believe how effective it was. Like nobody else got poisoned after the original day. That's surprising because...
Imagine if that's how serious everyone took masks at the beginning.
Yeah. The investigators actually did find other poisoned bottles on the shelves.
Oh, but everyone listened.
But everyone listened and got it thrown away, so...
That's amazing.
It's basically like a textbook case of how to handle a crisis if you're a pharma giant, essentially.
Yeah.
Even though they found out really early on in the investigation that J&J was not at fault in any way, like... It almost could not have been them, their factory or their supply chain or anything like that. They still took a huge hit, but they managed to salvage their image in the process.
I mean, look at us singing their praises.
Exactly, because lots of people high up in J&J were afraid of how a recall would look because it almost looks like you're saying it's our fault.
Yeah.
You know?
But in this sense, they're saying, like, don't die.
Don't die, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that Chicago mayor press conference requests a recall. J&J may or may not, I don't know, have been super annoyed, but they backed her up and they were like, yeah, let's get rid of it all.
That's so good to do. Like, what a great company.
Yeah, I know. They recalled every bottle of Tylenol in the area by that Friday. So this is happening on Wednesday. By Friday, you could not get a bottle of Tylenol on any shelf in the Chicago area.
That's good.
Which is crazy fast.
Good job, friends.
They didn't worry about the money. They didn't worry about the impact on the company. They stopped shipment, ordered all their distribution chain to pull it back in so that we could figure out what was going on. And that sticks out in my mind. It was not a negotiation or discussion. In fact, they stepped forward and volunteered it.
Some analysts predict the Tylenol brand name will disappear within a year.
We concluded we were never going to be judged by what caused the problem. We were always going to be judged on how we responded to it.
So next, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration tested over 1 million capsules around the country, and they found no tainted bottles outside the Chicago area, which is good.
Yeah.
So they also know at this point it is someone in Chicago doing this.
Yeah.
It had to be. Because the other thing is, if cyanide sits inside those capsules for very long, it disintegrates. Like, it doesn't have a very long shelf life. So it had to have been done, they figured, like 1 day before the pills were taken. And it had to have been done in the Chicago area because you couldn't
ship them out.
You couldn't have had time to ship them out.
Got it. Okay.
Which I think is how they kind of eliminated the supply chain partially.
Yeah, that's good.
So despite the fact that the FDA tested a bunch of capsules all around the country, within 1 week of the murders, J&J decided to recall every single bottle of extra-strength Tylenol produced at this time in the United States.
I mean, hats off to you, honestly.
So that was over 41 million bottles valued at $100 million, and that's $100 million in the 80s.
Yeah, but it's still nothing to those big companies. I mean, it's something, but it's like...
I mean, yeah.
Meh.
Yeah, it's probably a drop in the bucket for J&J. But also, at this point, they're like, are we going to recover from this ever? We'll take the $100 million hit and just see how it goes, right?
Right, our reputation.
So they pick up every single bottle in the United States. They take it to their factories and destroyed it, allegedly. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But that's what that's what they told people. And at this point,
That's what we think.
They're handling it so transparently that I actually believe they probably did that.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
All the bottles of extra-strength capsules were removed Friday as part of the nationwide recall.
Now, not only is extra-strength Tylenol off the shelves, Tylenol commercials are off the air.
So, in addition to the recall, the company established relationships with the Chicago Police Department.
Appointment.
My God. Every episode, there's one time that one of our mouths doesn't work right.
It's usually me, so I love it when it's you.
Deportment.
The
department, the FBI, the FDA, they're like, everybody get in on this. We're all friends now.
Yeah.
And they actually wanted, I mean, this person is at this point cost them $100 million. So they're like, we want to catch the person who did this.
Yeah, we hate him.
And prevent any further tampering, right? Because they're also taking a huge, at the time, huge PR hit.
Yes.
They offered also to replace any pills that were purchased by anyone in the country for free.
They did a lot.
So another massive financial hit. They put out a $100,000 reward for information that would lead to the capture of the person involved in the murders. And they set up a 1-800 hotline where people could call in tips regarding suspects in the killings. Which, why wasn't that the police?
Did the police set up a hotline too?
I don't know if they had a separate hotline. Maybe they were coordinating together and they were like, we'll handle it.
Yeah.
But I read about this and I was like...
Maybe you give us the people, we'll do the operations of it.
Exactly. Essentially, I think Tylenol was like supplying the spot and the people and, you know, whatever to do it. And then they were sorting the tips and then the investigators were going out because there's like 140 people on that investigative team. So then they're the ones who are looking into the tips that they're getting on the hotline.
Good job, J&J.
Yeah. Later, J&J would go on to receive an award for how they handled the crisis. As of 1981, Tylenol accounted for 17% of the pharma giant's net income. Immediately following the murders, lots of market researchers were like, they're never going to, you know, that meme where it's like, I'm never going to financially recover from this.
Yes.
That's what people said about J&J.
J&J said, watch me.
Right.
Watch me whip.
So this is where the genius of tamper-proof packaging came in. Because 2 months after the killings, J&J introduced triple safety measures. So boxes around the pills that were glued shut, around the bottles that were glued shut.
Yeah.
Induction seals, so like plastic seals around the child-proof lid, and then a plastic peel-off cap on top of the bottles, plus the gel capsules.
Trust was lost in the packaging because the packaging had enabled the poison, the cyanide, to be entered into the medicine.
6 weeks to the day since the Tylenol murder story broke, Johnson & Johnson held a news conference in New York to reintroduce Tylenol.
Tylenol capsules.
It had the cotton ball, it had aluminum over the top, it had a childproof cap, it had plastic over the childproof cap.
So after this, Tylenol sales skyrocketed.
Yeah.
1 year after the poisonings, Tylenol had gone from 37% of the market share of over-the-counter analgesics to 7% after the deaths, and then back up to 30% a year later. So they recovered for sure.
Yeah, they said, we got this. They said, hold my phone really quick. Hold my drink.
Hold my beer. Yeah.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, exactly. 1 year later, in 1983, they also helped lobby Congress to pass the, quote, Tylenol bill, which made tampering with food and drugs a federal offense.
Yeah. Big.
So now if you, like,
facts.
open a tub of ice cream and lick it, you're being federally prosecuted.
Talking about you, Texas.
Mad respect. You better be. Don't lick my ice cream.
Don't do that. That's disgusting.
It's super disgusting. Also, what kind of person? Whatever. Anyway.
Right. That's a whole nother situation.
How dare you? Okay. In 1989, the FDA also established guidelines that followed along with what J&J had done. So they were kind of the trendsetters in tamper-proofing products. So the FDA goes on to require that everybody does this, which is like a really good idea for consumable products.
Yeah.
Feels that way. And then in 1991, year of our birth, what up?
Turn up.
J&J agrees to a settlement for an undisclosed sum, all lawsuits against it for the Chicago area deaths. There's this guy named Robert Kniffen. I don't know if the K is silent.
I think it is. Kniffen?
Kniffen, who's a spokesperson for J&J, and he stated, quote, though there is no way we could have anticipated a criminal tampering with our product or prevented it, we wanted to do something for the families and finally get this tragic event behind us. So they just paid people money.
Yeah, that sucks.
They were like, this is how we deal with this. We just give them money.
What else can you do? It wasn't their fault.
But good for J&J because they totally survived it. Yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, whatever. Like you said, it's a drop in their bucket. It's unfortunate that they got swept up in it, but they clearly recovered because they handled it, like, proactively.
Yeah, they handled it really well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how the company responded to what is widely considered one of the first ever instances of domestic terrorism here in the U.S., because that's what this was. It was terrorism.
Yep.
Like, plain and simple.
Yeah.
So let's rewind back a little in time, and we're going back into the investigative teams trying to solve the murders.
All right.
So
that's us rewinding.
Throwing it in. So when they start investigating, they quickly merge these like 5 separate murder investigations led by the Chicago police, FBI, FDA, everybody and their mama.
Everybody, come on.
Get together in a room.
We solving crimes.
Get in, bitch. Period. We're going crime solving. And they call it the Tylenol Task Force. They're like investigating, they're sharing information, like another refreshing change from a lot of murder investigations.
Is a shared responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Like no one is in here swinging their dick around going like, I'm not going to share information with you. Well, I'm not going to share information with you. Like everybody's just like, let's get this solved.
Yeah.
So good for them. They quickly find that the bottles had come up with inside of a 50-mile radius where all of the drugs were purchased.
Mm-hmm.
They also find more bad Tylenol tainted with cyanide still sitting on the shelves, even after the recall had been implemented.
That's so scary.
Because some store owners didn't know about it. They left them on the shelves, which, yikes. This is at this point a 140-person task force. They figure out that the pills that had been tampered with were from different production plants, sold in different stores, meaning that even though they were from the same lot, it likely was not a J&J production issue.
That's probably what really saved J&J.
I think so, too. Because if it had been, can you imagine? Like, if somebody at their plant...
Like, they also handled it really well.
Was putting cyanide...
But that's really good.
Yeah. No, it definitely helps. So now they're thinking it's probable that the tampering was done after the drug was placed on the shelves.
Okay.
So not at the factory, not during the supply chain. They decide what probably happened is someone either bought the drugs or just slipped them into their pocket, took the capsules out of the box that is not glued shut, remember?
Yeah.
Poured them out, opened them, filled them with cyanide, put them back in the bottle, put them back in the box, and just put them back in the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So this theory, they end up, like the profilers and everybody involved, they end up calling it the lone madman theory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually still the working theory of the Tylenol Task Force.
Investigators say they are searching for, quote, a madman.
because I absolutely love this Criminal Minds profiling stuff. We're going to talk about it. I know you do too.
I do.
So let's talk a little bit about the person who they think would have done this, if you believe the lone madman theory. Okay. They said that the person who did this was probably a man in his 20s to 30s who worked a very normal job. They said he probably would have had low self-esteem, and he would have done this type of killing to boost his own self-worth.
Why do people think this boosts their self-worth?
I think because you're like an action that you took is on the news and it's freaking people out.
Yeah, because you're a dickhole.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just something to give them spotlight.
So weird.
Yeah, you're a dickhole.
You are.
No, I mean, obviously I don't get it, but...
We should call this the dickhole theory.
Dickhole syndrome.
Yes.
I love it. They said he probably would have seemed really normal, like someone that you could sit next to at work. But he probably would have had like a Jekyll and Hyde type of personality, like a really bad temper.
Yeah.
So you sit next to him all the time. He seems super normal. And then occasionally he has like a violent outburst. They said this is the type of dude.
Like an abuser.
Yeah, something like that. They said if it was one person, that person probably would have taken their own life after the killings. There's only one guy who said this, and it was the medical examiner. So I don't know if this was actually part of the working profile.
Oh.
But the medical examiner was like, I bet we never caught him because he killed himself.
Yeah.
So maybe. Unfortunately, as I said in the beginning of part 1, this case is still unsolved.
That's so crazy.
No one has ever been formally charged in the case of the Chicago Tylenol murders, but there were a lot of suspects.
Good. Suspect everyone.
I suspect everyone for sure.
I do too.
Thousands of calls came into that hotline that had been set up. It took a ton of time for the task force to narrow down leads that were actually worth following up on because, you know...
People be saying things.
Right. People are crazy. They'll call in and be like, yeah, it was the Mr. Potato Head. Like, whatever. Okay. They have to sort through all that bullshit.
Also, people call in and they're like, I have a creepy neighbor.
Which, same.
It was him. You do.
They actually the task force looked into 1,200 of those leads, which is crazy. Like, that's so
lot,
many leads that they had to look into.
We did receive hundreds, indeed thousands, of tips and would investigate and run down every single one of those tips.
They narrowed it down originally to about 400 possible suspects.
God damn.
Right.
There are 400 people who might have murdered 7 people.
Right. Like, I know less than 400 people.
That's terrifying.
Pretty quickly, they established, like, we're not going to figure out who did this. We're probably not going to catch this person, but we're going to keep trying.
Oh, that's sad.
It is sad. The other thing is, as it keeps going unsolved for months and months, eventually people are going to have to split off and do other jobs, right? Other homicide investigations. The FBI is like, we'll keep looking into it, but we're the FBI. We have shit going on, right?
Just small little things, you know.
I don't know what else they have going on, but things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So by the end of 1982, the official task force is just 20 people. Partially, I think it was because it was a lot easier to get away with things then. Like, that's why they didn't catch anybody.
Yeah.
I think. There's no paper trail, right? A lot of people don't have credit cards, so there's no spending record, there's no cell phone data, there's no security footage. Like, how do you catch someone without any of those things? Because that's, in modern times...
That's how you catch everyone.
Think about it. It's like DNA, fingerprints, cell phone data.
Yep.
What do you have that's unique to you? Those things.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they really had very little evidence to go off of. And they had no motive. Like, they didn't understand, like we were talking about earlier.
Why?
They didn't understand why anyone would do this. It was like senseless and random and just violence for the sake of being violent, right?
Yeah.
But we had several other suspects, none of which would answer the question of why. And there was no direct link as to the indiscriminate taking of life.
The investigation continues.
There was no evidence to pin it on anybody at that time, and there still hasn't been any evidence to pin on anyone. So that's where this all stands. It's the perfect crime.
So the last thing I want to talk about are a couple of the existing theories. Because it's unsolved, this is kind of all we have. So some people suggested the possible involvement of like domestic terror groups, which do exist, unfortunately.
That would be what I thought, yeah.
But a lot of people said that couldn't have been possible because they would have claimed responsibility for it. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think people think that. I also think that sometimes people just are really evil.
I do too.
They want the confusion.
They just want to cause panic. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the root of it, I think you're right. I just don't know. Okay, we'll keep going. One of the victim, Mary Reiner, the mother who passed away, or who was murdered, I shouldn't say passed away, like it wasn't passive, she was murdered. Her daughter, Michelle Rosen, thinks that the manufacturing plant is where the tampering actually occurred and that the whole thing was a cover-up by J&J.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she has a whole website about it, and she's written a book about it, I think. So she's like, J&J, basically, she thinks they had a really good response because they were secretly at fault. Like, not that they did it intentionally.
Oh, by proxy. Like one of their employees did it. I see.
Yes, exactly. They think it was like a disgruntled employee who was at some point in the distribution chain, like, was mad at J&J, was mad at someone, did it, they went out.
I don't think so.
But that's never been proven.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Michelle might know.
Yeah. When we're going to talk about 3 more suspects, one of them, I think, did it.
Damn, I think every new one you say, I'm like, damn. That's probably
You're
what
like,
happened.
Damn, that one's right. Okay.
That one's the one.
There's this guy named Roger Arnold, who is a DIY chemist.
He did it.
Sketchy as hell.
Just the name.
Roger.
Yeah.
Don't do chemistry in your garage. If you do that, people are going to think you're guilty.
And don't have two first names.
If you have
as your
2 first names, you're
name.
guilty. I'm sorry. Period.
Period.
He's also a dock worker. So when he was 49 years old, he was actually the first ever named suspect in the case. And everyone freaked out trying to prove it was him.
Yeah.
His life was basically ruined because of being implicated in this case. Like, everybody treated him like he was guilty, although he was never found guilty, and he was never even technically charged.
Oh, he was just investigated.
Yes. So a couple of the reasons they thought it might be him, he worked at a grocery store warehouse for a chain, like a grocery store chain, where several of the Tylenol bottles had been purchased. He worked for like a distribution center. So they were like, well, maybe he poisoned it at the distribution center and then went around to other stores and did it there to cover his tracks.
Yeah.
The police searched his home. This is another thing. So they get a warrant. They search his home. They found a lot of guns.
Why does anyone need a lot of guns?
Like a lot of guns.
Like, make it make sense to me. If you have more than 2, I do not understand.
It's a lot of guns. If you have more than 2, it's a lot. It's like cats. If you have more than 2 cats, you have too many cats.
It's out of control at that point.
Okay, I agree. He also has a book about how to kill people in his home.
He did it, Sydney. He did it.
And he admitted...
I saw that just now. I was like, oh, he did it. He did this.
He admitted at one point to having cyanide in his possession.
Guilty.
He's like, well, yeah.
Put me on the jury.
So they ask him, they're questioning him. They're like, have you ever had cyanide? And he's like, well, yeah, but like a while ago.
Guilty.
Like, I threw it away.
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Also, his wife said that one time she became super ill, like she was throwing up after taking Tylenol that she found in their home.
Jail.
Ultimately, he was cleared by the police, but he was sus AF, and I maintain that.
How is it that he was cleared and people are innocent on death row for 40 years?
I have so many questions. Also, the reason I feel okay saying his name and the reason I don't feel bad about talking shit about him is because 6 months after he was cleared, he actually did murder someone else.
What?
So he knew this guy who was an owner of a local bar, and he thought that that guy had turned him in for maybe being, like, quote unquote, possibly being the guy who turned him in for the murders.
And he murdered him.
So he found this guy, or who he thought was this guy, in like an alleyway. He shot him at point blank. It turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. It wasn't even the owner of the bar. He just shot some dude.
Yeah, he did it. 100%. 10 out of 10.
He was found guilty, served 15 years in jail, died 9 years later.
Roger Arnold.
Maybe he did it.
You did this.
I don't know.
He did it.
Oh, you just wait, because this next man...
Maybe Roger Arnold did it with the next man.
I think this guy did it. Okay.
Okay.
This guy, his name is James. He is still alive. He has never been arrested or prosecuted for the murder, so I'm not going to say his last name. You can find it anywhere if you want to know real bad.
I'll Google it right now. I'll say it.
Okay.
Just kidding. I'm not going to. Is that his picture?
Yes, I included that so you could know what's up. Get the vibe. Get the vibe.
Yikes, he did it. I changed my name. Roger.
Roger.
I guess you didn't do it. You did something else.
Yeah, Roger is guilty of other things. So this guy, never technically arrested, never prosecuted. However, I think he did it. Okay. A little while after the poisonings, he wrote a ransom letter to Johnson & Johnson that basically was bragging. It was like, I've spent $50 and about an hour total, and I've caused all this panic. Give me $1 million and the killings stop.
XOXO James.
Gossip Girl. Yeah. Obviously, this letter was traced back to him because he's a dummy. Maybe don't think it was him is because he goes on to do some really dumb stuff.
Tell them what he did. How
he
they
gave
got
a
caught.
bank account number for how to wire them the money. So the cops tracked down the owner of the account,
Yeah.
who was his ex or his wife's former boss. And his wife's old boss is like, yo, I didn't do this. But I know who did. James hates me. He did
It was
it.
James. Big James energy.
Yes. So they go to James and James's fingerprints. They're like, hey, James, can we have your fingerprints? And he's like, yeah, no prob. Gives them to him. His fingerprints are all over the letter. Like he wrote it.
Yeah. This all tracks with what I'm seeing
Yes.
here visually.
Visually, it's James.
Yeah.
So the cops start looking into him. He has like a super long rap sheet. He at one point wrote a death threat to Ronald Reagan.
Okay. That's super nonchalant.
Super chill. Death letter to a president. Please don't do that.
Please don't.
Also, several outlets reported a very weird story about James where the body of his former client was found dismembered in bags in his attic, and he was indicted, but they couldn't charge him because the police went into his home without a search warrant. So when they searched his home, it was performed illegally.
God damn.
So that dismembered body couldn't be used as evidence. Moment of silence for doing stupid shit.
For common sense. Yeah. What the fuck?
That dismembered body has also never been explained. No one has an explanation for that, especially James.
Because they don't have to. It's probably still up there.
He also fled his hometown after a failed credit card scheme. He got fired after a violent outburst directed at his coworkers, so he fits the profile.
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Also, the cops interviewed him, and they're like, hypothetical scenario. If you had done it, how would you have done it? And he answered them like a fucking clown.
This is true clown shit energy.
Big clown energy. He's just like, well, if I had done it, this is how I would have done it. And he describes like exactly how it happened. And the cops are looking at each other like, so it's him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're all on the same page here, cops.
When they literally apprehended him, he was at the New York City Public Library making photocopies of names and addresses of newspapers, presumably to send letters to them that were like the one that he sent to Johnson & Johnson. So he's arrested. He goes to prison for extortion for 13 years. He has admitted publicly that he wrote the letter, but has always said that he didn't do the Tylenol murders. He did it, but okay.
Yeah, he totally did it. This man, this is the man.
My only question is he smart enough to have gotten away with it?
Well, it doesn't seem like that hard to have done this.
Yeah.
I would argue he didn't get away with it because we have all the evidence we need right here. Like, he did it. They just can't prove it.
They can't prove it. And that's exactly
system that we have.
100%. And that's exactly what the Department of Justice said in 2009. There were these court documents released. They concluded that he was responsible, but they didn't have enough evidence to charge him because they couldn't place him in Chicago at the time of the murders. That's pretty much the only reason why he's not being found guilty.
But he did go to jail for 13 years.
Yes, for extortion when he sent the letter to J&J.
Was that the max he could get?
He got 2 separate counts for extortion, and they were 10 years each, so he served 13 out of a 20-year sentence.
Okay.
So
he should have served the whole thing.
I mean, good behavior? Like, you had a body in your attic? How good can your behavior be?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. How much behavior are we talking here?
Since his release in '95, Lewis has continually maintained his innocence in the murders.
I don't know if you're the guy or not. And
I cannot be the guy if I was in New York when it was happening in Chicago.
But his denial hasn't closed the case.
In 2009, the FBI worked up a DNA profile and partial fingerprints of who they think is the murderer. They made James give them a DNA sample and fingerprints, which he fought in court and the FBI won. So he had to give it to them, but nothing has come of it since 2009, so I'm guessing probably it wasn't a match.
I think it was James.
I think it was James, too.
I think it was James and Roger.
I think it was James.
Are they connected?
Allegedly, no. So the last theory is super interesting. Also, maybe a conspiracy theory.
You would have one of those in here.
You know, I love a web sleuth theory.
Yeah.
That's what I love. It's also actually been looked into by the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
So the infamous Ted Kaczynski, or as we all know him, the Unabomber. If you don't know anything about him, I don't know where you've been for the last 30 years. He's a known serial killer who started out as a child prodigy genius, became a technology-averse, reclusive mathematician living in a cabin with no running water in rural Montana.
God, talk about my worst nightmare. Talk about that.
They're like, oh, he had a library card. I'm like, and no friends? And he grew his own food and he shit in a bucket? Ew.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, couldn't be me.
It ain't for me. Mm-mm.
Beginning in 1978, Kaczynski killed 3 people and injured 23 more with these strange homemade explosive devices that I found out he often made out of wood.
Okay.
He was like anti-technology, so he made them out of wood, which, okay. Essentially, he wrote this anti-technology manifesto that was like 1 million words long, where he said he hated everything related to computers, machines, technology of all kinds. He included drug manufacturers, and so that's where this theory came from, I think. But also, his parents' home was right smack dab in the middle. You know, I said they created like a 50-mile radius of where the drugs were found. His parents lived in the middle of that circle, which all my Criminal Minds fans know that's how you catch a killer.
They know. This is how. Yeah.
So online sleuths have actually constructed a map of the locations of the pills and where they were purchased. And his house is right in the middle. So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
They've also constructed a timeline of his life that places him in Chicago at the time of the poisonings.
Honestly, all of these people are responsible.
Everyone's guilty. I'm fine with it.
Like, I don't care. They all did it.
I think, I don't know who, like, chicken or egg, who did it first, whether it was, like, web sleuths and independent people who were just interested in this case, and then the FBI got involved, or if the FBI was involved and then the web sleuths came out. But either way, the FBI requested Ted Kaczynski's DNA in 2011 to compare to what they had found in the case. I couldn't find where anything ever came of that. And Ted, from his cell in a federal supermax prison in Colorado, says it wasn't him. And he's like, I don't even know where I would have gotten potassium cyanide.
Okay.
Which is like, you're a serial killer. Why would we trust you?
You also made bombs out of, like,
literally,
I don't know, twigs.
Twigs, yeah. So, like, you're really smart enough to have gotten it. You're fine.
Yeah.
They also have one image on a security camera of a bearded man in a hoodie standing behind the last victim, the flight attendant Paula Prince, in the Walgreens where she purchased the Tylenol that killed her, and his face looks like Ted Kaczynski.
Well, he did it too. So,
I mean, people who don't believe this theory are like, just because he was standing there, even if it was him, just because he was standing there behind her doesn't mean that he did it. And I'm like, well, he was looking awful suspect.
I listened to all of those wrongful conviction episodes, and with what they get people on,
yeah,
why they couldn't get somebody on
it feels like they could have gotten somebody. But if you can't...
They could pull a name from the hat at this point.
Yeah.
They're all worthy.
To me, I still think it was James. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it was James.
There's no single person or even a group of single persons that stand out above the rest at this point in time.
We had no clues as to the motivation except the taking of human life. It made no sense. There was no clear and intended victim, but just anyone who happened to have the misfortune to buy a bottle of Tylenol.
Okay, so according to a couple of sources, the FBI transferred the case back to local authorities in 2013, where it remains open. As of now, the case remains unsolved, and that's what I know about the 1982 Chicago Tylenol murders.
That's crazy.
Who do you think did it?
I just, anyone. Pull them up. Who's top of list?
You almost made me spit my drink directly into the microphone.
I'm like so serious. I'm like, well, could have been any of these motherfuckers, to be honest.
I actually agree. We may never know, but I hope you liked that.
I did. I did not, actually.
No, it was a lot. But thanks for sticking with us. If you're back for part 2, we hope you liked it. I'm sorry it's unsolved. I kind of hate doing an unsolved case.
But it is a good example. Like,
something like this changes the way that we handle product packaging forever.
Right. This is cool. They did the right thing.
Agreed. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you liked it.
Yeah.
Hit us up on social media. Don't forget to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast if you like what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what we think.
That's what we got. And don't forget,
malpractice makes perfect. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.